This week, we present a technical segment offered in conjunction with our sponsor, Domain Tools, Deobfuscating JavaScript to investigate phishing domains. In our second segment, we welcome Richard Mellick. He's a senior technology product marketing manager at Automox. We're going to talk about why waiting to deploy patches of any kind makes you a bigger target. In our final segment, we air two pre-recorded interviews from Black Hat 2019. Roman Sanikoff from Recorded Future, which is awesome. I mean, awesome interview. Roman was an interpreter for the FBI in Russian, and when I asked him questions about what's happening in the underground, it's just awesome. Ray DeMeo of Versec will also join us as well. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Effectively securing your organization and its reputation requires a smarter approach. To maximize efficiency and minimize risk, security experts turn to Logarithm, the only leading solution built solely for security teams by a security team committed to your success. With next-gen SIEM, user and entity behavior analytics, network traffic and behavior analysis, security automation and orchestration, and compliance, Logarithm provides security made smarter. Is your IT team ready to face the next implementation or upgrade? Do you have a pool of talented team members who are trained and ready to support your organization's growth? The right IT skills development platform can get you past the IT skills gap. With training content that's so engaging, some even call it binge-worthy learning, your team will watch and learn more with IT Pro TV. Get a free team trial of IT Pro TV today. Visit securityweekly.com/IT Pro TV. Are you an enterprise dissatisfied with overpriced analytics software that can't keep up with modern data? If so, then GravWell is the solution for you. GravWell is an unstructured data analytics platform for enterprises who demand total data visibility across their network. GravWell lets your security team go beyond the SIEM and fuse data sources to correlate and answer questions you didn't know needed to be asked. Go to gravwell.io/securityweekly for an unlimited data trial and gain uncompromising visibility today.
Hello, and welcome to Security Weekly. Before I introduce you to a man who puts the dick in dictionary, that's a Python dictionary, I'm going to throw it over to the lavity of the Patrick.
Okay. Stop me if you've heard this one. A man walks into the bar. The bartender looks at him and says, "It's Paul Asadorian."
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode 617, recorded on August 22nd, rather. I don't know where I get the 7 from. 2019 at G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. To my left, Mr. Patrick Laverty.
Hey, cheers, Paul.
Cheers. Hey, old fashions.
Yeah. The drink, yeah. I thought you were referring to me since I'm a little on the older side, but...
You are actually older than me, aren't you?
I think I might have
I think you are.
a decade or so, but yeah.
No way. Get out of here. Anyway.
All right.
It's nice to have you in studio.
It's always good to come down. This is
And you're
great.
still working for Rapid7?
I am, yeah.
Okay. So
Yep.
doing pen testing?
Doing all that pen testing stuff.
Sweet.
Whole lot of fun. Hack all the things.
And speaking of testing pens, Mr. Joff Thayer is also on the lines. You doing more pen testing or coding or teaching? It sounds like teaching lately, right?
Yeah, actually, it's been a mix of malware development for the red teams at Black Hills, and also teaching and more leadership stuff, and less actually hands-on pen testing. Although I do get in the mix there a little bit as well. So a little bit of everything.
That's awesome. Mr. Lee Neely is on the line. He's got his beads.
Yes.
I'm going to leave it at that.
I got my kukui nuts. I brought my nuts.
Okay.
Live from Wailea in Maui.
Maybe if your nuts weren't on screen, we'd appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Well, nuts to you.
You're just nuts. That's why we love you, I guess.
Well, when it all gets beated up in the end.
You're in Hawaii on vacation, and you're here doing a show.
I'm actually, which tells with me, actually, I am in Hawaii for credit union director training. One of my things I do, I am the board treasurer at my credit union. And so occasionally we go to a conference for training. In the past, we've done it in Vegas. This year, we're trying the one in Maui. So
I
far, I
mean,
like
why
the
not,
weather and
right?
the view better.
Yeah, right. That's awesome.
Just happens to be in Hawaii, so
Good for you.
you gotta go.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I love that comment. It's like, yeah, well, so why not?
Yeah.
I mean,
Why not?
why not?
We've got some exciting news about the Security Weekly webcast program. We're now partnered with ISC Squared as an official CPE provider. If you attend any of our webcasts or would like to view our archives even, 1 CPE credit per webcast. That's what we negotiated. 1 credit per webcast, 1 for 1. Register for our upcoming webcast with Zane Lackey of Signal Sciences. Now, I'm very excited about this one because I've been working with Doug Coburn, and speaking with Zane, and today actually we deployed Signal Sciences into our application. I've done some scanning, and it's giving us results, and it's really, really cool. And I can now, like, firsthand testimonial, deploying Signal Sciences is like really super, super easy. I mean, our application has some issues with deployment, and like it's still, I put it in dev, it pushed all the way up through the train, and the dashboard was being populated. It was really super easy. It was awesome. And Doug was awesome. I mean, those folks also really know their stuff too. Doug's like, oh no, you're on this. Okay, you want this config here. I'm just going to paste it in the chat. And it's awesome.
Copy paste, drop it in.
You could have stopped in the middle of the sentence and said our application has issues, and
Yeah.
we would
got it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we want Signal Sciences on, is because it's got issues. We want to try and fix as many of those as possible. So and monitor for security as well, as it's going to be exposed to the internet and all that kind of stuff. So
I would call that proactive, Paul Asadorian. That is proactive, my friend.
It is proactive, yeah. And so we're going to look at what's going on in our app. And we're going to talk about it on the webcast. I mean, how about that? Talk about
Awesome.
practical experience, right? Ian McShane from Endgame is also joining us. Ian's awesome. He was a former analyst, I think, with Gartner or Forrester, one of the two or both, and now works for Endgame. He's awesome. He's awesome. Don't miss that one. And Stephen Smith and Jeff Brocher of Logarithm. Logarithm's been just a long-standing sponsor for a long time, and they're awesome. One of the great places to work too. The folks that they don't leave once they get to Logarithm. That's it. They don't go anywhere. SecurityWeekly.com/webcasts. Do I have another announcement? I do. We will be at Hacker Halted in Atlanta, Georgia, October 10th through the 11th. EC Council is offering our listeners a $100 discount to attend the two-day conference. Use the discount code HH19SW. You can go to securityweekly.com/Hacker Halted. Jeff Mann will be speaking. I will be giving one of the keynotes, so make sure that you check that out. And now, our technical segment, which is going to be a lot of fun. Talk a little bit about domains, reversing some really stupid JavaScript obfuscation. Maybe talk a little bit about Python, Joff. I'd like to hear from you as to how we might use Python to help us in this investigation as well.
Awesome. You want to hear about my Python? Is that what you're saying?
I do. No, well, not yours. I mean, the one.
Oh.
The one on the internet, I guess.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
How do you know his is not on the internet?
You know,
Hey, Lavity nailed it.
There's a non-zero chance of that.
oh boy. And also a little bit about Domain Tools, which is a software from our sponsors that I use in domain investigations, which is really, really awesome. And there'll be a follow-up blog post to this, which will probably talk a little more about the Domain Tools application and how you can use it. So this whole journey starts when I got a phishing email. Now, I actually had to go dig and look for this a phishing email that I could use in this investigation. So I dug around in my inbox, and I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting because I have an American Express card, like a lot of people do. And I got an email, and it says you've got some irregular activity, which, I mean, I take my fiber. My activity is pretty regular. Yep. Usually, I don't know about you get older, you get fiber helps. Right. So I'm pretty regular, and they're like, your account's on hold and blah, blah, blah. And
it's important to take your Metamucil, Paul.
That's right. That's right. And so, I looked at this, and I'm like, well, that's definitely a phishing email because, well, the first thing is they had to attach the HTML to the email instead of just sending me a link, which I thought that was kind of weird. But I was like, hey, I've got a file. I've got some stuff that I can look at. Now, obviously, the other thing is it's fraudulent because if you look at the from address, right, it's American Express at rugjam.com. RugJam.com.
No, that could be real.
That could be real, right? I think RugJam is just another name for American Express. I think that's what they were trying to get at in this phishing email.
I think in Canadian it's correct.
It's called RugJam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Or
Yep.
maybe in Hawaiian, it's RugJam
Yeah,
is
maybe.
American Express, right?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. So also grammatically, this email is a hot mess,
Really?
which is the other telltale sign. Now, I'm kind of with Ira Winkler on this one. I don't think we need to train our users to look at the from address and the grammar, right? Like there should be clear policies that like, hey, if you work for the company and you're managing company credit cards, like if you get an email, don't do anything with the email. Either call the credit card company or log in and verify before you do anything, right? Even clicking on the link in the email should be the best practice.
I know somebody that wants to give a keynote address on this kind of thing, and the entire address is going to be what. Don't click on shit. That's the whole thing.
Right.
That's all you need to know. Don't click on shit.
I now want to give the counter address of go click on everything you
Right.
you can possibly click on.
But you know what? It's not even about clicking or not clicking. I think it's about following a procedure that says when this happens, do this, not that. And clicking could be like, don't take a phone call and have someone do something. You know, don't click on a link you get in Messenger. That kind of, all those chat, like whatever it is, like don't fall for the scam. Rather, if this condition happens, you go to the credit card site, log in, and or call the credit card company, right?
So you want to have your if else finally for what you want to do.
Yeah, try, accept, else, finally.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So
we need like a bumper sticker saying your brain should tick before you click.
oh, very nice.
That's a good one. So I started analyzing the HTML, and I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. And, the first thing I saw was, well, this HTML is loading some JavaScript from a .nl domain. That's kind of interesting. So then if we cut to my screen, I thought the JavaScript was kind of interesting, right? So they're basically declaring a new array, and they're setting elements. Is that the right term? I did use the right term. Every language has its own. I've been in Python so long. They're not called elements. Are they? Dictionary elements? They are. Right? Is that right?
Array elements are probably
Array
fine.
elements is pretty agnostic of language, right?
Well, yeah.
So
Then we
anyway.
Got this huge
I'm going to
array.
say elements, all right? So we get an array with
Stuff.
a lot of elements in it that are basically what look like random numbers. And then we've got a loop that's going through it. And they're essentially using the math function. And I don't pretend to understand exactly how all of this works. Joff may be able to decipher it, and others way quicker than I can. And I was like, well, my first thought actually was I could write a Python script that can parse JavaScript. And then I'm like, very quickly, I'm like, that's probably a really bad idea. I mean, that sounds like fun. Don't get me wrong. I was on the side of fun and cool and nerdy, but I was like, that could take a really long time. So you can see there where I've commented out the document.write, right, which writes to the DOM, and I've replaced it with console.log because I'm like, well, fancy JavaScript. I'm like, I really, rather than write something in a different language, I really just need to run it in JavaScript, and JavaScript will do the work of actually decoding this for me. So I'm like, well,
Wait. I missed something, Paul. You said you commented out your dong and replaced it with...
the document.write. Yes.
Module.
The part where it writes it to the
Dom's
browser,
dong.
not the screen, the browser, right? In console.log. So I'm like, well, if I want to run JavaScript, can't I just use Node on the command line? Because Node runs JavaScript locally. So I changed one line to, instead of writing it to the DOM, I write it to the console, and I run it in Node. So like this wasn't anything like earth-shattering, but I'm like, this is actually a pretty valid way to, if you have a JavaScript sample, be able to run it. And I'm sure there's lots of tools you could have uploaded it to, and it might have, expanded that out for you. They're probably just running Node in the background. So
But this seems pretty straightforward.
straightforward, right?
You could have gone really serious and went out and got SpiderMonkey and,
Right.
went to town.
Yeah, and you can load it in a browser too. I mean, that's the other way to do it, would be to load it in a browser, but I'm a command line kind of guy. I wanted to just analyze. Oh, the other thing was I didn't want to load this code inside my browser and have it do bad things inside my browser. I could spin up a VM, which I did, and went to some of these sites and ran it in a VM, which then you can just revert to snapshot, and that's certainly valid approach as well.
Sure.
So, but what was happening here was the first piece of JavaScript basically decoded, so it was multi-stage decoding, right? Decoded into a second piece of JavaScript that I basically just did the same thing, right? Then I took that JavaScript and I ran node against it. Again, I replaced document.write with console.log, and I ran it again. And finally, I got another, so I got an HTML file. So after I ran it the first time, it showed me JavaScript. When I ran that as JavaScript, or the file, it was HTML to JavaScript, then JavaScript, another JavaScript. When I ran that, it produced HTML. So it was like a multi-nesting kind of thing. So in this one, I'm getting HTML that is really just a script tag that's calling more JavaScript, which is kind of interesting, how they're trying to really go through great lengths to hide.
Another clear American Express site.
Yeah, and then, exactly. So then this JavaScript, I expanded out, which was more obfuscated JavaScript, that finally, I don't know if this is like the fourth or fifth iteration of me basically unpack. And each time it was a different domain, mind you. So that's the whole purpose of this text segment, was each time it was loading the HTML and or JavaScript from a different domain. And so I'm just happily going along, deobfuscating my JavaScript, collecting the domains that it's hitting, until finally I got the actual phishing site, which is pulling content via JavaScript in some cases from the real Amex site. So they did a decent job. I mean, Joff and Patrick know, right? Like, you can pull elements from.
Sure.
There are ways in which you can seed and encode your JavaScript so it only runs on your site. So if an attacker does try and do this, it'll get flagged. You can put canary tokens in your JavaScript to know if it's getting executed on other sites as well. So then, the full website, basically, it looked like an Amex page that was asking you to log in. However, there was one pretty critical difference when I pulled apart all that code, was where it sent the post for the form went to a site in Germany.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not Amex.
No, it's heilgeist64.de/tilde hue/hh.php, because that's totally a legit Amex.
And I'm totally unfriending Hugh now after he did that.
Right?
Come on.
No, right. I bet he's got a small Python.
And so, but that gave me yet another domain to investigate. So I started plugging this into domain tools, basically.
Oh, sweet.
And so one of the domains on there. So now what's interesting, before I get into this, what I found interesting was one of the earlier domains was when I went to it. Like I said, I spun up a VM and I went to it. And I ran all the files through VirusTotal, and it found stuff as well. But I wanted to see what these sites really were. And to me, what it looked like they were sites that had been hacked, that the attacker placed some dropper code on, and that was part of basically their chain of events that would happen when they do this phishing attack. And I'm sure it happens in malware as well. And I think that's awesome, because there was some statistic that I may even flag the story, which we're not going to cover this week, but I did read an article that said that the overwhelming majority of new domains that are registered are in fact malicious. And so the attackers know this now, that like when I register a new domain and I need to do bad stuff with it, or even if I just register a new domain, that in of itself is anomalous. So what they're doing in this case is they're looking on the internet, which you can scan in less than a day, certainly, probably less than half a day, right? If you're looking for a specific thing, depending on your infrastructure, scan the internet really fast, find some vulnerable WordPress servers, right? Find some web vulnerabilities, and go compromise those sites. Now those are just placeholders for my code in some stage, right? You realize your infrastructure is going to get burned along the way. Like I said, this was like 4 or 5 different stages. Each of those 4 or 5 different stages was calling back to a different domain. And that domain could be perfectly legitimate. It could have a really high score on all the threat intelligence sources going, that heilgeist64.de, totally good, valid domain. It's been valid for a long time. It was registered 10 years ago. Everything is good, but the attackers just compromised that and put their code on it. It's interesting. That's something as pen testers we could do, but we'd get in a lot of trouble for. and potentially it's also a violation of the CFAA.
Well,
to compromise someone else's site,
Hey,
store
Paul,
files on it. I mean, details, but don't do that. We can't do that, right?
You said something kind of interesting along the way there, and that was the majority percentage of domains registered are actually potentially evil or malicious. I wonder if anybody actually has a percentage on that.
Yeah, I don't remember, and we're not going to do stories, so.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought.
No, it's okay. Yeah, and I don't remember what that stat was for that, but it is out there. You can search for it.
I'm
I'll post a
wondering-
tweet, but
My kind of gut feeling is it's probably like, something like more than
Half.
80 to 1 or 90 to.
Or
yeah,
could be.
I think it's pretty high, I imagine.
So,
if you go
so
across
how
all
about the other way
go ahead,
around?
Lee. Go ahead, Lee.
We know that a lot of these new domains are malicious intent. What's the poor sod with a small business who's trying to get his domain up and going to deal with? He's going to be fingerprinted as malicious.
Yeah.
Kind of blow for those guys. I mean,
Well,
they're not
and-
exactly,
yeah. It's a great point, Lee. I don't think that's the only indicator, right? Is if it's new. I think there's other indicators that, and it's really unfair.
like if it has malware on it.
Like if it's not .com, .net, or
Yep.
one of the popular ones. If it comes from another country, if it's .cx or whatever,
Yeah.
or .cn, and it's
.ru.
new, I'm like maybe it's malicious, right?
Yeah.
Or how many people have visited that domain since it was registered in my environment? In other words, go back in the past, couple of months and go, no one's ever visited this domain before. It was registered within the last 3 months, and it was loading JavaScript that was obfuscated in some way. So those things together, I think, is what really
Right.
makes an indicator. I don't necessarily believe it's a sole indication, although based on the stats, pretty good one. But you're right.
Yeah.
They're all the good ones that are registered new.
Yeah, I also saw another story this week, not that we're going over stories tonight, but where these kind of things that are happening that you're referring to with this whole kind of chain of sites, it was kind of interesting to see that there's no honor among thieves, where a lot of times there's going to be a web shell already installed on a server,
Yeah.
and somebody else is jumping in and stealing,
Yes.
using that web shell, that bot, for their part of the botnet as well. Which is probably also one of the reasons that sometimes when you do some of those forensics on web shells, once in a while you see them with passwords on them.
Yeah, or you see multiple attackers are on the same
Yeah,
site.
absolutely.
They don't even know that each other is there, right? They've used the same vulnerability,
Right.
which hasn't been patched, to get into the system. And so now there's like 3 different campaigns running off the same. And usually that will bump up its score, right? Usually once that happens.
How about the place where you and I worked once together?
Oh, yeah, I saw that all the time.
And I
man.
got to do the forensics one time when our web server got compromised, and there was more than 90 on there that I.
C99.php, remember?
There was lots of iterations.
There was variations of that
Oh
one,
yeah,
too. That was
lots.
a popular one.
I still have. I kept all of them.
Yeah.
And some of them were pretty good. Like the same group that made Javi also had their own web shell on there, which was really nice.
Yeah. So I find that in doing these investigations, what I found is that some of the domains will usually be okay and maintain that state, but somewhere along the way their domains start to get flagged, right? I think the more nefarious they kind of get with those domains, and let's be frank, this is a phishing email. This isn't they're serving malware. But I think what happens is they've got other campaigns running, or the scenario we just described, another group gets in the same server and starts serving malware from it, and then that site ends up on a blacklist. And you see, if you cut to my screen, you can see that this Claudia.ml was in my investigation as I went through the multiple domains. Now I switched to this one, and it's got a score of 79. So 0 being the most legitimate domain in the world, 100 being the most awful, the Moss Eisley of domains is 100, right? And so this has a score of 79, and it even indicates, and I think this is if you have the professional edition, if we can cut to my screen, this particular domain that was in the chain, thank you, was 46 for 50 for phishing, 79 for malware, Proximity is like in proximity to other bad domains, where does it score? So like if the same person registered this domain that also registered another domain that has a score above a certain amount, that also factors into one of the sub scores. So Domain Tools does a great job of collecting this information from multiple sources. They have partners and sensors throughout the internet that are monitoring domains and subdomains for activity and correlating that all together for you. So basically, as an analyst, I get to go to one place and say, yeah, this domain's bad. It's got a score of 79, and basically the threat profile is it's serving malware at some point.
Yeah,
So
I really like that part that you talked about, that they look at other sites that are around it or other sites that owner has registered, because as you're talking, that was one of the things I was thinking about, is what about just like joespetstore.com, where it's just some small business wants to run a pet store and that he gets compromised.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that kind of person to get knocked offline, whereas that kind of analytics could really help, where Joe's Pet Store hasn't registered other domains, so he's really not in the business
His
of
proximity
bad
score
stuff.
is probably going to be low. However, what can influence that is, let's say there's a hosting provider that's horribly insecure, and mom and pop shops are hosting their websites on it,
$5 a month.
And hosting provider has vulnerabilities, and they compromise multiple sites on there, right? And those sites start getting really bad scores. And what the engines will do is say, and I think rightfully so, right? Basically, domains that share this IP address, domains that share this DNS name, domains that share these specific routes. What are the classes of routes called in BGP? Joff, I'm having a mental blank now.
Classes of routes of BGP. What?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I missed you.
Yeah, the section of the internet that you're in from your hosting provider is also.
Autonomous system numbers, AS numbers.
AS number, right? Your AS number is also associated with a lot of bad activity, right? Thank you. Mental blank. Then you're going to get classified as probably being in proximity to stuff that's bad because you're on the hosting provider. But if the hosting provider is compromised, you've maybe not earned that score, but your hosting provider by proxy has earned that score for you. So
if you're hanging out with scumbags, you're the nature.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm
what
just
was it? My high
flashing
school,
back at how
my
hard
high
that
school
would be to do by hand.
My high school graduation, Lee, was one of the speeches was, you can't fly like an eagle if you hang with the chickens, right? So host your domain somewhere where you can fly like eagles. No, don't host it with the chickens.
That's it.
So I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Think about
Lee?
how long would that have taken for you to correlate all that stuff together by hand?
Oh, we used to do it. Patrick talked about the university. We used to do this by hand. We used to look at the domains and then start doing these investigations manually. It'd take forever.
Yeah, to get it to this level is impossible to do manually.
Yeah. And I mean, they have an API. You can hook this into your stuff. So it's really awesome.
So cool. I wrote a DNS haiku this week, but I'll let you keep going, Paul.
Yeah, so I did run some of the files through VirusTotal as well, which Domain Tools partners with, and that's just kind of like an added step. And it did, flag some of these as also being associated with malicious activity, some of the various detection engines and such. Recognizing, for example, this JavaScript URL. I know it's hard to see, but they did recognize that JavaScript URL by 10 engines, right?
Well, there it is.
Was malicious, right? And this was one of the ones that I showed on the screen, the .nl domain. Bitdefender had already flagged that. And it takes various engines different times. And again, Domain Tools is calling from different sources. So, some of those earlier ones may be caught now by Domain Tools, right? Or may eventually be caught based on activity. But somewhere in the chain, they ended up racking up their score for one of the domains. So, and then I did go to some of the sites that were actually hosting this. This one, I believe, was WordPress. It looks like someone's Photoblog that was compromised.
Did you notice what version of WordPress?
I didn't.
Okay.
And it was probably one of the photo upload plugins.
Oh, yeah.
Those are notorious.
Tim Thumb or something.
Yeah, those are notoriously vulnerable. I don't know if I have another one in there. Oh, yeah, this was one of the other ones in there, too. Oh, and what's nice is from VirusTotal, right? You can use that as another source in your investigation and get people's comments and say, basically this person's saying, yeah, I saw this. It was an attachment. It was obfuscated. It was part of an attack. So that can help you. Then what you can do is inside domain tools, take that list and those list of domains and the really bad domains that they're associated with and create an automation that basically just goes and blocks this in your network, right? However you do that, through DNS, through some other kind of proxy or whatever solution it is, you're basically collecting domains that today are being used for phishing attacks, and it can kind of look ahead in the future and say the domains that are related to this, the people who register these, like basically just blacklist all their domains too. So if they try again or we get more phishing attacks, we're covered even before they happen.
Or I wonder if there's a way to block it just by that JavaScript file.
You could, yes. That gets tricky though,
Yeah.
because you got to reach into every single HTTP request response and do some funky stuff there.
So do you think you could have written something that would have done all the steps you did with deobfuscating and collecting and changing, document right to the console log automatically for you?
Joff, you mentioned a tool earlier. What was that tool?
I mentioned a tool earlier. I don't remember. Unless I was talking about you, Paul.
Spider
sorry
Monkey?
about that.
Jeez, Spider Monkey. Patrick
Spider-
remembered.
Yeah.
I'm the one
Hey.
that's had the least to drink, I guess.
No, it wasn't a tool. It's Firefox's JavaScript engine. That's what Spider Monkey is.
I got you. So you could funnel it through that. But in terms of automatically deobfuscating each layer, is there tools that exist? I'm sure there's stuff that exists to do that, commercial or open source, probably both. Right?
There probably is. I'm just not in the business of doing it. And I would end up doing it by hand, which, well, sucks.
Yeah. I know CapTipper. Have you used CapTipper before?
No, I haven't. I've used Burp plugins, though, to do deobfuscation and beautification of JavaScript.
Sure.
But anyway, that's more on the pen testing side.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could totally script something yourself that uses Node to do that. CapTipper will also, I think, pull apart and help you deobfuscate JavaScript, as well as pull files out of packet captures and things like that. So if you had a PCAP system, you could certainly do it that way as well. So, and I'm sure there's other tools that, this is just how you do a manual, investigation.
Yeah, you had a one-off to do.
Exactly. And you may end up with that too. I mean, you may end up with your automated systems basically flag this hunk of web code of any kind, right? And when you go in and do the investigation, I mean, it's got enough indicators that you're like, I got to pull this apart. Again, there's probably tools that exist, I would imagine, that you could automatically send this off to and have it do exactly what I did on an automated basis, right? Pull everything apart, pull out all the domains, pull out all the IP addresses, right, John?
I would make a bet that one of our listeners
knows the
more
answer.
Blue team side probably knows exactly the tool to use.
If not, someone should create some for free and commercial, like we, right? Even if they exist, I think it's a cool exercise to do as well.
Well, the reason I asked the question was partly I was wondering if something exists, but also with all the work, Paul, you've done as of late with automation and scripting, I'm thinking you were already on it.
One of the things based on this is, yes, exactly that. Some designs that could do this, particularly at scale. Yeah. Which, again, I mean, exist in various forms today. But I think also fun to kind of do on your own as an exercise. So
it's all good.
Yeah, this would also be something fun for my fellow friends that are also studying for the OSCP, where there's one particular machine in there where this is exactly what you have to kind of start with. Right. Where there's a bunch of obfuscated JavaScript is kind of the first step to get in. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure other people that have studied for the OSCP probably know which machine that is. But, yeah, this kind of thing, picking it apart, is something that's a good skill to have.
Absolutely. Again, I think CapTipper is a tool. If you're interested in this kind of forensic analysis, CapTipper is the tool. And that uses PCAPs as input and then allows you to do things like this, but inside of the PCAP, right? Pull out files, pull out certain conversations. There was a webcast with someone where we talked about it. It's one of the ones that stands out where I was like, that's really cool.
Yeah, I see. That's a GitHub project.
Yes. A lot of really, really cool tool. A lot of code, too. I started looking through their repo.
It's Python.
And it is all written in Python. Hopefully Python 3 and not 2.7, because then they have a challenge on their hands, much like I do.
That's awesome.
Cool. Any other questions? I will do a follow-up where I will show the domain tools interface in a little more detail, and you'll see that in my upcoming blog post. So make sure you check it out.
Awesome.
It's Python.
Paul, that's
2.7.
really awesome. I mean, putting all that stuff together is just all in one dashboard like that. So nice.
Yeah, I really,
You gotta admit.
I like having that tool in my arsenal, certainly, because it just saves me so much time. So there's lots of options you can get. You can get access to the API or the interface itself. It's a collaborative tool, so I can share my investigations with others. I can export my investigations. So it's fully integrated into your SecOps team for doing that.
Yeah, I would think anybody that's doing blue team stuff, that's a must-have.
You should absolutely have that tool.
Absolutely.
And then you can automate it with the API. So I would just
Start
take my
building your
list
own
of domains, tell me what you know about them, take the scores, and bring that in. So
cool.
That and maybe a rub text or whatever it's called. Was it rub text, robotext, whatever?
Robotext.
Wait,
Yeah.
what's Jeff rubbing now?
I don't know. We don't want.
I'm not rubbing anything. I was playing with my fidget spinner. Actually,
Awesome.
it's all Lee's fault.
Security Weekly colored fidget spinner. It is anyway.
I sent Joff a box of fidget spinners.
He did.
So-
He sent me a box of fidget spinners. So, just so while we're on that topic, Lee identified item number 1.
Oh, I like that.
Is that a
That's
bottle
the
opener?
dad fidget spinner. That's for opening your beer.
That's the dad fidget spinner, right? Yeah. You don't
Very
wanna
nice.
make sure you keep this one close. These things drive my dog crazy. The noise or something, he gets all freaking nuts. Anyway.
SecurityWeekly.com/domain tools. If you want to learn more, make sure you check out my blog posts in the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned.